All right, so Dricus du Plessis retains his middleweight title at UFC 312 with a comprehensive beating of Sean Strickland. Let's talk about it before we do. My name's Rahul J. Chan. This is the Battle Camp. Thank you very much for joining me. If you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. So look, man, obviously it's been nearly a week now since Dricus beat Sean Strickland. And I wanted to talk about it, not so much about the fight itself, but more about Sean Strickland and where does Sean go from here? Because during fight week, I felt as though Sean's light was dimming, right? Because one of his main kind of attributes is driving interest and engagement with all of the things that he says in press conferences and interviews and on Twitter. And it kind of comes to a crescendo, hopefully I said that right, during fight week. And this time around, last week, it was a little bit, for me, out of sight, out of mind. Now, there might be a couple of factors why I didn't feel the full Sean Strickland effect last week. And it might just be because the event was in Sydney, Australia. So there wasn't as much engagement as there would have been if it was in America. But he's fought in Australia previously, and I didn't feel as if though it was a case where the interest was as low as it was on Saturday. It might be that it's a rematch that personally I didn't want to see, and I know there's a number of people that weren't that interested in Dricus du Plessis fighting Sean Strickland, just because there's a guy called Khamzat Chimaev out there. It might just be my own algorithm, because I kind of don't really engage in a lot of MMA related discussion online. It might just be that my algorithm, my timeline was full of Arsenal and football related content, so I just didn't happen to see the stuff that was out there. But all of that aside, there's been a lot of talk of Sean Strickland. The stuff that he says before the fight doesn't correlate with what happens inside the octagon. A lot of people have been talking about how he said that, oh, I'm going to fight till the death. And then when it came down to it, he just fought a really boring, conservative, defensive fight. And he didn't put his foot on the gas when it was blatantly obvious by the end of round 3 that he either needed a finish or he needed a very dominant performance in the final 2 rounds to stand any sort of chance of pulling it back or even getting a draw, right? But I suppose the point I wanted to make is, why is anyone surprised by what they saw from Sean Strickland in the octagon? What has he done to make you think otherwise? What evidence has he given to us from previous performances where you think that he has it in him to be overly offensive, not with his words this time, but with his actual fists, and try and kind of snatch something out of that fight with Dricus du Plessis? Like, every single time I've seen Sean Strickland fight, it's been a very defense heavy, like he's focused on his defense to not get hit, not get hurt. And then his attacks are based off of what he's able to achieve defensively. And he's never really been someone that kind of throws caution to the wind and goes all out and dies on his short sword if need be. Like, he's never been that guy, right? So as we got to like the 4th round and the 5th round, it was just, all right, well, this is just going to be, unless Dricus can really hurt him, hit him in his nose again, this is going to be a shutout victory on points for Dricus du Plessis, and that's what happened. So I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, why there's no nothing that happened in the fight should surprise any of us. I'm someone that puts no kind of credence or stock in the things that Sean Strickland says, because I feel as though I don't even know whether he believes half the things he says. I feel as though he started going down this road of saying outlandish, out there stuff that is racist or borderline racist, offensive, however you want to say it. And he started seeing engagement off the back of it, so he carried on walking down that road, right? And with him as a individual, his fighting style, it kind of reflects to me, and obviously I'm not a fucking psychologist, but it reflects to me his state of mind. Because for me, it feels as though he's a highly insecure individual. And those insecurities are there for everyone to see in the physical form when he's in the octagon refusing to attack. He's almost like, I'm not saying he's almost like a scared individual in there a lot of the time. And it feels as though that's why he focuses so much on his defense, because his primary thought is to avoid damage rather than inflict it. And it's a total opposite outside the octagon, because all he wants to do with his mouth is inflict damage. And anytime someone comes at him, his reaction, like in the press conference with Dricus du Plessis the first time around they fought, his reaction is of someone that, oh, hold on a minute, aren't you the guy that tells everyone not to be a pussy? Aren't you the guy that tells everyone not to be offended? It just all kind of, everything that happened on Saturday night, it all just fell into place of who this guy is as an individual. It sounds as though I'm hating on Sean Strickland. And the fact is, I'm actually indifferent to him. I don't hate him. I don't like him. I don't care for him. And the reason I say that is because the stuff that he says on social media and on the mic, it doesn't bother me in any way. I don't care for his opinions. Like I said before, I don't put any stock in his views. And I can think of one moment where he's entertained me when he knocked Israel Adesanya down in his title fight. But apart from that, I've never really cared for his fighting style. If he wasn't a guy that says the things that he says, I'd be very doubtful that he would have found his way into a title shot and into a position where he gets a rematch off of a fight that he lost. Granted, it was very close, but he never defended the title. He won it, and then in the next fight, his first defense, he lost to Dricus du Plessis. One thing that I was quite surprised about was when Dana White said, "Oh, what a professional performance! What a professional performance!" He had his nose broken, but he carried on going at him. Well, yeah, he did have his nose broken. Yeah, he stayed in the fight, but just on the outer edges of the fight. He was never in the fight. He was never trying to win the fight. He was just present. Do you know what I mean? So, I was actually quite surprised by Dana White. I thought Dana White would be more kind of, and not that I wanted him to be, but just going off of how Dana White's behaved in the past, I thought he would be more aggressive, I suppose is the word, towards Sean Strickland. I thought he'd be more scathing in his analysis of the fight. Perhaps Dana White knows that Sean Strickland for some reason is a draw, and he didn't want to kind of he didn't want to say anything that might rock that boat, right? He wants Sean Strickland to maintain some level of star power, because he knows he's going to need him for future events. Who knows if Dana White's that calculated. A word on Dricus du Plessis, because I think, I was a guy that criticised him heavily in previous videos. But one thing that I can say is the way he carried himself during this fight week, and the stuff that he said in terms of what he wants to do next, and that he wants to fight Khamzat. I believe him. I believe that he's totally here to fight all comers. He has total belief in himself. And even though he looks cumbersome and uncoordinated during fights, and every time he fights, apart from this one with Sean Strickland, I've picked against him, he's earned his position. He's done it the hard way. He's fought everyone that the UFC have put in front of him, and he's won convincingly more times than not. The only time that he hasn't is against Sean Strickland in that title fight. Obviously, there were previous fights, while he was unranked, but I'm talking about when he's had to face the top 10 UFC middleweights on the roster. But yeah, I just wanted to share some thoughts about Sean Strickland. Where does he go from here? it was quite interesting because I watched the Nixick interview with Ariel Helwani this week, and he was quite open about his assessment of the performance and Sean Strickland's state of mind and what he being Sean Strickland is hoping to achieve with his future in the sport. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. But from a personal point of view, just because I don't find him entertaining outside the octagon and I don't find him entertaining inside the octagon, I just hope that he's now pushed into relative obscurity when it comes to fights of merit and fights that matter in the middleweight division. And those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Put your comments below. Yeah, it's been like I think it's been a year or so since I made a video. So in true Battle Camp fashion, I've basically decided to talk about a fight that happened days ago and post this video just so I can minimize views and engagement and stunt the growth of this channel. But if you've enjoyed it, please do share it with a friend, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.